Hello and welcome to another episode of The Mark Medley Show. And today's episode is going to be a takeoff or a spinoff or an addition to, or however you'd want to couch that in terms of my topic I've already written about in my blog, The Critical Thinker. But every now and again, a topic so moves me that I want to do it across or express it across multiple platforms. So as I just said, this particular topic I already introduced last week in a blog post in The Critical Thinker. But because I felt so strongly about it, I decided to also convey it in this podcast. Every now and again I'll do that, again based on how critical or important the topic is to me, and I hope it is to you. The particular title that's in the blog post, as well as going to be the title for this podcast, is We Don't Know Who We Are Going to Be Buried Next To. Now, I know the fact that you just heard the word buried probably already has thrown you somewhere else or taken you to a different place or depressed you or made you sad. But the fact of the matter is, if you're listening to this and you're alive, the fact that I was able to speak this at some point, we are going to pass away. That's a fact. That's not what I think. That's not even just what I know. It is a fact. The fact that we were born and we are alive, at some point, we are going to pass away. In other words, we're going to die. That's just being blunt. But let me tell you where I'm trying to connect this and where I'm going with this, because we see so much hatred, so much racism, so much genderism and sexism and every other kind of ism that you could possibly imagine here on earth while we're alive, the way we treat each other and how we act towards each other while we're here in life, when the truth of the matter is, for the most part, you don't know who you're going to be buried next to. You don't know as a man, if not, you're not going to be buried next to a woman. If you're a Jewish person, you're not going to be buried next to a Muslim. If you're a heterosexual, you're not going to be buried next to a homosexual. If you are Polish, that you're not going to be buried next to somebody who's African American. And the list can go on and on. So that's why this whole notion of hatred and treating each other nasty and any way that we wouldn't want to be treated here on earth always fascinates me. Because if you were to take a walk in a cemetery and you were to read the headstones or the gravestones or the markers, whatever you call them, it would be an interesting experiment for you to see the names. Just take a look at the names that are lying next to each other. You may get a Jablonski and a Brown. You may get a Rabinowitz and a Williams. And again, the list can go on and on. You might get a Graziano and a long name that we can't even spell. Polish name, Russian name, African American name, Jewish name, you name it. If you walk in a cemetery and read the different headstones, you will see the different names and nationalities and ethnic groups, representatives of those groups who are lying in eternity, right next to each other, wherein in many instances, the person lying there next to someone in life they may not could tolerate, could stand, they hate it. And a Caucasian lying next to an African American that in life hated the fact that the African American had dark skin or melanin. Languages, various language groups right next to each other may never have communicated in life. Yet, in the cemetery, they are lying right there together. Now, I know some of you out there are scholarly, and some of you are thinking, well, you could always buy your plot, or we have a family plot. But even with that, There's only so much control you have over that. And even if you do have a family plot somewhere within the perimeter, somewhere within the area, there are other folks that are buried next to your family plot that may not be of the same ethnic group or belief system that you are. Yet in life, we can treat people any old kind of way for silly stuff such as the color of their skin, for silly things such as their age. Because again, the same way that I was sharing those other groups, you can have a 5-year-old buried next to a 95-year-old. You can have a 10-year-old buried next to someone who's 100 years old. The fact of the matter is, we don't know, nor we have any control over who we are going to be buried next to. However, we do have control over how we treat people while we're here on earth in life. There's that biblical golden rule that says, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. So it's trying to say, don't do to somebody else what you wouldn't want somebody to do to you. Yet we break that rule every day here on earth with somebody. Treat people the way you would want to be treated. If you wouldn't want it done to you, don't do it to someone else. It amazes me that in 2019, how easy it is for people to take the life of someone else. If you turn on the news at any given moment, you will see someone's life who was taken that didn't have to be taken. It was taken out of somebody's anger, or it was an argument, or it was a fight. And it fascinates me how easy someone can take out a gun and pull the trigger and wipe out the life of another. Or they take a knife and they stab, or they beat somebody to death. Or in other words, they've taken someone else's life. And what's really interesting is when by chance they're caught and there's the possibility that they could face life in prison or the death sentence, they fight like heck. Not for the very thing that they've just done to someone else, not to happen to them. For someone who has just murdered someone, they fight like, I don't know, for themselves not to be executed. So that's what I'm saying. It's just amazing to me. And then when it's all said and done, when we all come to that point of having to be put away for eternity, we have no clue who we are going to be next to. So one day, when I had absolutely nothing else to do, I decided to go through the alphabet just for fun and just kind of juxtapose various occupations or ethnic groups or beliefs or whatever based on the alphabet. And again, I had nothing else to do. So I just kind of sat down and went A to Z and just kind of came up with some titles or names or ethnic groups or beliefs or whatever that could possibly be buried next to each other. So let's get started. The alcoholic can be buried next to the astronaut. The bishop can be buried next to the barmaid. The crook can be buried next to the cop. The drug dealer can be buried next to the deacon. The engineer can be buried next to the embezzler. The financial analyst can be buried next to the flimflammer. The gangbanger can be buried next to the gardener. The hooker can be buried next to the hairstylist. The insurance broker can be buried next to the identity thief. The jailer can be buried next to the junkie. The keyboardist can be buried next to the kidnapper. The librarian can be buried next to the lion tamer. The makeup artist can be buried next to the murderer. The nurse can be buried next to the nutritionist. The optometrist can be buried next to the obstetrician. The pastor can be buried next to the pimp. The queen can be buried next to the quality control technician. The receptionist can be buried next to the robber. The sales rep can be buried next to the shoplifter. The teacher can be buried next to the terrorist. The usher can be buried next to the urologist. The veterinarian can be buried next to the violinist. The waiter can be buried next to the welder. The xylophonist can be buried next to the xenophobe. The yoga teacher can be buried next to the yard worker. And rounding out the alphabet with Z, the zookeeper can be buried next to the zipper machine operator. Now, I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek and maybe somewhat satirically, but it's something to think about. Think about how we treat people here in life. Another thing that amazes me is how when someone goes, we automatically post RIP, rest in peace, SIP, sleep in peace, rest in paradise, sleep in paradise. And yet, in many instances, the same folks we are wishing them to rest in peace did not live in peace. Everybody goes to heaven when they pass away, regardless of what they've done or didn't do. Everybody goes to heaven. The murderer goes to heaven. Everyone goes to heaven no matter what type of life they've lived. So I say again, treat people while we're here on earth how you would want to be treated. If you wouldn't want it done to you, if you wouldn't want it to happen to you, don't do that to someone else. Absolutely blown away by some of the things we see on the news. Even in a sporting event on Thursday night, the Pittsburgh Steelers were playing the Cleveland Browns. And somewhere in the last few minutes of the game, one of the Browns players hit another Steelers player with a helmet, took the man's helmet off and hit him with his helmet. Now, if I had it my way, that player would be done in the league. There would be no more football for him. I understand second chances, but that's beyond egregious. Those helmets are hard. Our skulls are not. That could have caused serious brain damage depending on the angle that helmet was hit or did hit. Where are we going with this level of violence that everything just seems to be getting more and more violent? I saw where in road rage, a driver literally took his car and pinned someone who was standing against another car, rammed his car into a person that was standing. Now, I don't know if it was the driver of the other car who had gotten out the car or if it was a pedestrian, but in any event, the driver in road rage took his car and ran it into a human being who was standing alongside another car. Back to what I said a few minutes ago, it is amazing for me how easy it is for folks to either take a life or harm someone else. Give it some thought. We don't know who we're going to be buried next to. The same people that we're hating in life could be our partners in the ground or in the mausoleum for eternity. You can catch me live every Saturday morning from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. as I broadcast on my radio show. You can tune into that by logging on to Go Brave, that's GOBRAVE.org. You can also catch it on the TuneIn Radio Network. You can catch it on Radio FX. You can hear this show as well as my blog, The Critical Thinker. But if you go to my website, it will be the hub to everything that I do. For all of my endeavors, all of my projects, all my media work, if you go to my website, it is the gateway. It will get you to everything else. My YouTube channel, it'll get you to the podcast, it'll get you to the blog, it'll get you to the radio show, it'll get you to any services I might be able to offer you. So go there. It's my name, very simple, MarcAmedley.com. MarcAmedley.com, my full name, Mark, middle initial A, MEDLEY.com, markamedley.com. Go there. You can reach me. It has a contact page. Anything that you'd like me to do for you in terms of media, in terms of public relations, in terms of public speaking, any of those things, give me a shout out there. There's a business number on there as well. That's 800-588-6192. Again, all that's on the website. Give it some thought. We don't know who we're going to be buried next to.